Welcome back to another episode of Ballroom Chat, the podcast dedicated to sharing the dance journey. I'm your host, Samantha with Love.Live.Dance. Today, we are jumping right back into the second part of our conversation with Enio Cordoba and Terryl Jones. If you have not yet listened to part one of our conversation, I'm going to have you pause your podcast right here, go back to episode 59, listen to part one, digest all of the wonderful information that we covered, and then come back here. Okay, great. I've got you all back. So part two of our conversation picks up where we left off. We dive a little bit deeper into the topics of gatekeeping, the pendulum swing of time, and how the gap between competitive dance and social dance seems to be widening the more that we think of ballroom dancing as a competitive sport. We also talk about the fact that being mobile, especially with yoga or Pilates or ballroom dance, is shown many health benefits when it comes to aging. And Terryl talks a little bit about how she has taken all of her wonderful teaching, learning experiences from ballroom dance and is now applying them to her program, Yoga for Long Life, and making sure to bridge the gap between beginner level courses and intermediate level courses in a more user-friendly and individual-friendly way. So I hope you enjoy part two of my conversation with Enio and Terryl.
But basically is we made sure that the men felt like they were progressing.
Yep.
And at no point did we, and it wasn't focused on just the men and women just followed, because it goes back to what I was saying before. We challenged the men, but we gave them tangible skills. Because if it blows up in their face, they don't stay.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go back.
Okay.
I think we did it differently. We basically made the men not feel like dancing was something that you put tutu and tights on.
Right.
I masculinize it, and that's one of the reasons that the two teachers, when I say I masculinized it, we know the guys are in there comfortable. Think about this. The first thing you do in the studio, you go in and they put you in hold. Right. You hand a guy a girl. His brain just short-circuited. He can't function.
Guys' biggest fear is looking stupid in front of a woman.
Absolutely.
Yep. Number one.
So the biggest thing we did was we wouldn't let them touch a girl. Our classes were 90 minutes. They wouldn't touch a girl for the first 40, 45. And people go, "You're not having him dance?" No, because the minute I hand him he can't function. Now he's moving parts instead of just learning how to have basic rhythm.
So we came up with 100 different ways, depending on the dance that we were teaching and whatever, is for the brand spanking new ones to delay how soon they could blow up. We wanted to build a little bit of confidence, right, first.
Once I know what I'm doing, now I can hand me a girl. And yes, I'm still going to struggle. But again, I won't feel as stupid as if a guy feels stupid in front of a woman, he will not come back. Okay. And that's the biggest deficit in most dance teaching.
Absolutely.
Because, it doesn't
They don't
matter.
keep that as a priority. They're focusing on teaching the guy to dance. And I'm trying to make sure his ego doesn't get bruised.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But, you can only push beginner students so far, and especially with gentlemen, because I mostly work with couples who are wanting something to do as a fun hobby night, or wedding couples that are wanting to do a first dance or a daddy-daughter dance or what have you. You have to remember that you have to avoid frustration. A little frustration is good as long as they can work through it, but you have to be able to judge with students, especially male students, what is too far, too fast. And I need to make sure that that my students feel like they are equipped with the tools, that with enough time and practice, they can become masters of the tools that they've been given. And
exactly.
I wanted to circle back just for a second about the distance between formalized dance instruction and social dance. And when we're talking about competitive dance, these aren't things that we do in our day-to-day lives. You aren't going to go out on a competition floor, or you aren't going to go out to your honky-tonk bar and do a full cha-cha crossover with all of the posture and pizzazz that you would at Blackpool. Do we see the world of dance that we are currently in as a little bit of gatekeepers about what partner dancing should look like? And how do we change that if it is the case?
Well, you know, money talks. And the studios that I have consulted, their group classes are huge. They still have their competitive aspect. But I say to them, look, understand this. You teach, I'm going to use 2000, year $2,000. Okay. Let's say you charge $100. You teach 6, 7 lessons. You made $600 or $700. I walked out there and taught a class with 120 people paying then $10. Okay, some more. Okay. I made twice as much money in 90 minutes. And my people had a hell of a lot more fun than the one that came the 1 hour and then it's like, okay, leave.
Yeah.
Mine were encouraged to stay and have fun. So there's the first thing. I made more money in a shorter period of time. And to the point where I almost didn't even take privates. Why? Because I felt like when I'd come out there, it was like performing a Latin show. And that rock star feeling when you're coming out, you got 100 people waiting to hear you tell the same joke. You know, you're going to see, Enrique or Fluffy Iglesias. You're going to hear him.
Did you just equate yourself to Fluffy?
Yeah, Fluffy. Yeah. You know, you're going out there and there's 5,000 people in the arena or whatever that are here to hear you, and they're going to hear the same joke, but they want to hear it again. Our people kept retaking the same classes because the entertainment value was equal to or greater than the dance. They were good dancers. They didn't mind retaking a class. But so many of the things that we have been told in the ballroom teaching methodology, if you think about a box step, everybody starts with a box step, right?
Yep.
And yet, that's the one thing I tell everybody, don't do that, because it creates a level of frustration.
Yep.
People say, oh, well, it's been done. And I go, you know what? The godfather of ballroom dancing, Alex Moore, I happen to find one of his books, and he goes, do not start with a box step, start with forward changes.
Yeah.
And so we figured out a way to teach that. It was so simple that one group lesson in, I've got couples, and I'm talking couples, and I'm talking a group class that can go around the room with forward changes in one 90-minute class. And I see people struggle to learn a box step. And I always question, was that so that they would take more lessons, or so that they would feel frustrated and realize they don't know what they don't know? Whatever reason, I always thought, what a dumb thing to start with, because it requires people.
Why teach them something stationary in a line of dance, moving dance?
Right. So you put them out on the floor and they're roadkill, because the minute they get out there, they're getting run over by everybody moving around the floor. So even if mine were dancing, I call it country style, two-step.
At least
they're going around the room.
Yep.
So at least they go, gee, we don't have many steps, but one step would get them around the room. Hello? And so it's always been, when we would analyze something, we'd go, why are we doing this? So we started challenging so much of what was being taught and how it was being taught, to the point where, we're heretics, I should say, heretics.
Yeah, of course we are. It's interesting that you said gatekeepers, because it took my brain in an interesting place that I hadn't really thought before. But as soon as you said it and I started processing it, I thought, oh, that explains a bit of a phenomenon that I have noticed. And that is, Enio's always said, water finds its own level. And what happens if people come in and what they really, really want, they want to be good dancers, along the line or whatever, but they want the social aspect. I have seen good schools, good teachers, good sized classes where they get a group of people. And then what happens is their people end up leaving and going to schools where the teachers are not the quality.
Inferior.
They are inferior teachers. They are inferior teachers.
Technically
Inferior teachers. But they are providing I'll just say, looseness that they're actively wanting. They've learned enough from the good teachers so that they can go now into this inferior school and be hot tots, right? They're like the big ones there, but they've still chosen to downgrade. Well, if you look at that and you think, why would somebody choose to leave a higher quality instructor who's really giving them the foundations that they need to go to the school down the street where the teacher could barely handle a level class that the other school is teaching? Why would they do that? And I think it's because of that concept of gatekeeping, is because they are saying this is the right way, that they've lost the inclusivity of creating a space for the people that want less. And I think that was a really valuable lesson for me, is that McDonald's sells more burgers than everybody else, not because it's great quality, because it has a known acceptable minimum quality.
Yep.
Right? You're never going to get worse than this. And it's that known minimum quality that you won't go below is what allowed them to sell millions or billions or whatever their number is. And sometimes when you're focusing on quality, you forget that for a lot of people, McDonald's is good enough most of the time. You know, Enio talked about us demonstrating, and we would always, on the end of our first, week one, we would always demonstrate, this is what you would know at the end of.
This is what you'll look like after
this is level one, this is level two, this is level three, just so that the students know that kind of where they're at. I had so many students, and a lot of people think everybody wants level three, everybody wants the advanced. But I had so many students say, if I could just get to level two, that's good enough.
Yep.
I would be happy with that level one stuff. And I think it's hard for teachers to accept somebody that's worked so hard on themselves that level one's good enough, that there's a lot of people that when they get their level one, that's enough. Mm-hmm. And now the challenge is, as a business owner, when they get enough, what happens next? Do I lose them forever? Or do I create a space that allows them to continue being part of my community, even when they've decided level one is all they want? And I think most studios, if you're not on the path to do more, when you've ticked your box, you don't fit there anymore.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's that. So when you said gatekeeper, I think that's kind of
my question,
interesting point.
When you said gatekeeper, because I had always heard from one of my mentors that, and it was actually Wally Laird, 6-time world champion. And he said, as judges, our role is to keep the pendulum from swinging too far in one direction or the other. When it starts to get too much of this, then we slow it back down, or we change the technique or whatever, and we keep bringing it back to the middle. And, unfortunately, sometimes the young ones come in, and because of their ability to create, new skills and techniques and bring
new levels of athleticism.
Everybody runs in that direction, but it loses or it takes away from
something
what
else
we started this whole thing about.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, dancing is movement to music, or as Voltaire says, about thinking people mad, those that don't hear the music. If you understand that people enjoy music and they want, and there's a human need for connection, for touch. It's the most basic human need besides love, is touch. Okay. Now, how do we make it safe? How do we make it easy? How do we allow them to dance? We are so focused in ballroom on strict tempo, which when I DJ, I will not play. I will not play. 5 stars, 1 star. If it's by a, and I used to love dancing to the bands in England because of the energy. I gave up my last time at Blackpool. I quit. I said I cannot dance cha-cha to Talk to the Animals when I had been practicing with Tito Puente.
Yeah.
It drove me nuts. I couldn't do it. That was the final straw for me. But truthfully, the strict tempo, you can only dance 2 minutes. Songs have to be 2 minutes, and this tempo must be this speed. Why? That you have just boxed your student in to, people don't dance salsa. Why? Because they play too fast and too long.
Or they go to a club and it's like, oh, we like that song, but that's a swing, but it's too fast, or this is too slow. It's like, well, the swing dancers know different versions of it. If you've boxed them in.
In our club, we were open till 3 or 4 a.m. And we had people in their 50s and 60s that would dance the entire time salsa. And each song was 4 to 6 minutes long. And they never sat down. They stopped to drink water, have a drink or whatever, but they wouldn't sit down. People go, why is that? Because they were dancing different than the ballroom dancers. The technique was different. The style of salsa was different. So we have made we think, well, we need to get these people as many social dances in a party. So we're going to play 2-minute songs and whatever. And instead of teaching people how to dance, when in reality, the best part of a salsa song is in the last 3 minutes, the montuno and the mambo, when the song kicks in. Most ballroom dancers have never heard most of these songs because they play 1.5 minutes faded out, 2 minutes faded out, or in competition, 55 seconds. Is that crazy?
Gatekeeper.
Yeah. So as gatekeepers, are you asking whether we are looking at ourselves as the gatekeepers of what should be done? Because then I get on a soapbox and I piss everybody off because I challenge what they've been doing. Or are you talking about the gatekeepers as she saw it?
But she was talking about the gatekeepers. I understood what you were saying is the gatekeepers of the ballroom dance studios as how dance should be viewed by the population at large.
Exactly.
How I understand
exactly. If you are not in lifted frame and body contact and dancing a reverse turn and a natural turn, then you cannot be dancing to a 3/4 piece of music because you don't know what it should be. Or if you are not doing a rock step after 2 side steps, then you don't know what swing should be, because when we dance single time East Coast swing, there's always a rock step at the end of it. Kind of creating a market for ourselves by saying we are the authorities on the subject. Therefore, what you have been dancing growing up in your families, in your backyards, in your communities is not the correct educated form of dance.
Well, it's an interesting thing that you say that, having had a huge Latin club, was how many high-level pros would come to our club.
We're talking Latin or ballroom.
Right? And which ones chose to get on the floor and which ones just found a nice corner to sit and watch. And kudos to Victor Verace, standard champion. He was always up there on the floor. And how many Latin champions in my Latin club never got their tushy out of the chair, just sat there in the back of the room and watched. Why? Were they intimidated? Right? Because they're Latin champions, but it's I think because they knew they couldn't do what was happening on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you take the structure away and suddenly you don't know how to handle the situation.
Right.
Yeah. But to go to hop from that topic to your question about gatekeeping in a different way, with judges kind of modulating the pendular swing of movement, as with all art forms, as with all sports, the way that we dance naturally will change over time and will grow and evolve, and you do kind of see people pushing it to the extremes to figure out where the borders, where the edges are for what we can do, and depending on who the champions at the time are, or who the judging panel at the time is, different things are in vogue and different things are not. So do you look at the pendular swing in competitive dance as completely separate from social dancing at large, or do you wish there was more of a connection between the two?
Okay, hang on. A long time ago, I heard this. Competition bastardizes the art form. Okay. If you take that concept that you just said, a lot of what most people don't understand is that social dancing is just for fun, right? It is for fun. Competitive should have the what I call the usability factor. I don't know a whole lot of people who can do jive. And I pick jive's my whipping boy because it has gone so off the rails. There is nobody who can do jive when they're 65 years old, to be honest. You get people out there that, what do you see? Even at Blackpool, at the end of the night, when they, in some comps, Blackpool doesn't do it actually, but some comps where they say, at the end of the comp, they say, they have all the couples switch partners, the finalists, the 6 finalists, switch partners. What do you see? Left to right, right to left, change of place. Mm-hmm. American spin. They don't do gold, they don't do silver. They do left to right, right. And is why? Because they're saving their energy? No, I'm sorry. It's because most of that garbage isn't usable. It isn't leadable. Yep. You can say it is, but yes, in a school where that's all it's taught, instead of when we see Shag champions like Charlie Womble and Jackie McGee, at 75, he's doing back bends and splits. Okay, he's doing lead stuff. Lead and follow. Yep. Lead and follow. And I mean, these communities exist, and the ballroom community doesn't go into them because they're afraid of, as they say, they don't know what they don't know, and they're afraid of finding out that they're not as good as they seem. One little thing I want to point out, when I would go out a lot of times with students, not having left Pro-Am for 20 years, and I got back out there, the judges would stop me after I would dance a student in salsa or swing, and they'd say, "Oh my God, it's wonderful to see that style again." And that's the part where, like I say, I didn't feel the need to do what the young kids were doing. It's not, yes, it will develop and it will grow in the athleticism, but as I said, it's bastardized the dance form because it doesn't look anything like what it originated as. At least keep something that says this is a rumba. But when I look at it, as one coach said to me, turn the volume off on the TV and tell me what they're doing. Could be a samba, could be a cha-cha, could be a mambo. Yep. Because they're taking every figure from every dance, putting it in because they know it, they can speed it up, and it's wonderful dance, but it's not Latin. Or ballroom, when the girl's got no spine and she's hanging over him like a rag on a waiter's arm. I go, they missed somebody should hand him a copy of Bandwagon. Somebody should show him the elegance and say, are we only sport, or is there a component of art? And that's the problem. The musicality and the movement and the stillness I love, but they're going off the rails by just how they focus on speed and athleticism, and they've forgotten the artistry.
Okay, so where I think, I got 2 points.
I'll shut up.
The first one is, I'll just say ballroom versus the street dances. Now, within the street forms, they do have competitive forms too. So I'll kind of touch that. But basically, the street forms, their music is in constant evolution. and it's changing. The ballroom forms, a waltz is a waltz is a waltz is a waltz. We're not changing the music of waltz. So the dance itself has some stagnantness to it that's inherent to its definition. All right.
Yep.
So it can only change in certain directions. It has changed in the directions of more athleticism, which is in the same direction as you've seen in figure skating. Figure skating is now being critiqued because it's losing some of the artistry, because it's down to, okay, we have to have one double here, we have to have one triple here, and everything is just connect the boxes. And so because ballroom, in that sense, we're not developing new sounds for the waltz, right? Or new sounds for these things. They're not really changing the music of the dances. Though there are some changes. I can feel his spine going, but there are some changes in whatever. But basically, it's not. Whereas if you look at swing, the music of swing in the last 30 years is completely different. I mean, what's being played on the radio now, what was played on the radio 30 years ago that they were swinging to, is not even remotely similar. And so the street dances, the dance evolves to fit the music. And that is the nature of what street dances do. They will constantly evolve. And ballroom, by its definition, is going to be somewhat stagnant. So the growth has to be different. And so that's why I say for ballroom, that's why they've gone more like skating. They've gone for the athleticism, and especially there's the big push to get it into the Olympics. And so they're going in that direction, which ultimately will, if they do what they're trying to do, they will turn ballroom dancing into the Olympic sport, where it is nothing like the public skating that people go to. I mean, they become two completely different things, which in essence they should be. So there needs to be social ballroom that is completely separate and unattached to competitive ballroom, which now takes us over to the street dances, because the street dances, in their effort to grow as communities and have raise their standards, and because some people are competitive, they have competitions and stuff in those forms too. And the same issues that we're discussing here in ballroom are being discussed in those communities, because we're privy to those also. And there's the same issue of all that fancy show stuff in swing and salsa that doesn't belong on the social floor. Again, it's the exact same thing. They are two separate things. Even though that community in a whole will drift the music, within that drift, it still has the division between the two categories that must and has to be kept separate. And the one issue is when people start assuming that what belongs on the social floor is what they've seen on the show floor. And a perfect example of that is in our social dance classes, and how everybody likes to do a dip at the end of the class. We would take our 100 people and we would crowd them into one corner of the room, which it made it the equivalent of what actually happens on the social dance floor, and demonstrate what actually happens.
I ask, okay, guys, right now at the end of the song, and I go, how many of the girls, put your hand up if you want to get dipped at the end of the song? And there would be another couple facing the opposite way, and you see their heads like coconuts.
Yeah.
Right? I say, girls, how many of you want to get dipped? And the guys are looking around and they're thinking, wait, you don't want to get dipped? Girls, no.
Right, because they assume they saw that on the show floor, it applies on the social dance floor. So even within the street dance community, that division still gets blurred.
Mm.
So that's my...
No, and I think you summed up kind of the direction and the education that needs to happen in the fact that we are living in two different worlds with social dance versus competitive dance. Even in the street styles, you have your social dance and your competitive dance. So the analogy to figure skating, I think, is a great one, because when you sign your kids up for a figure skating class, you're probably expecting them to learn how to figure skate, not how to be the next world champion, unless you decide, I want them to be the next world champion, in which case you seek out a different coach or a different set of instruction. And I think perhaps taking that same philosophy, or making that education known when you walk into a dance studio. We have a social program if you want to learn how to dance. And at the point that you decide for yourself that you want to do this other thing that is competitive dance, we can transition you into that. But that's not going to be the expectation right out of the gate.
I think the kids, like, like whether you put your kids into piano or judo or anything, you can put them into a competitive program, no problem with that, right? Because at their level, they can't, the lead and follow would probably be a little bit more challenging. And yet in the swing world, the shag world, the salsa world, no, that's not the case. So that doesn't apply to ballroom and Latin. Ballroom and Latin are a little bit more structured. So I have no problem teaching young kids to whatever. I have a concern about what's going to happen to their joints, their bones, with the pushing of the straight knees, with the hardness that they're teaching it, which it's like, why are they doing that when that isn't...
Those bones, that's soft tissues.
But that style, it looks so ridiculously hard. So there's a lot of issues for me when they're talking about the kids.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about a studio. A studio turns off more people to dancing than it brings forward. Why? Because people go in and immediately they're being sold, competitive. We want to get you into competition. Instead of having, if you had a fun Jack and Jill and you tell people, hey, doesn't cost you anything, get in there. Just have fun. You draw a partner out of a hat. And they go, oh, that was fun. Some people, it's not their thing. They don't have to jump up and get in the line. But unfortunately, it's this focus on selling competition.
And I think that goes into cream rises to the top. So if you focus on the top of the pyramid, you're focusing on a small piece. But if you focus on building the base of the pyramid as big as possible,
right?
Focus on the bottom layer of the pyramid. By default, the competitive nature of some people, the desire of some people to be meticulous about learning things, those people by default will gravitate up out of that next level. And so if you start with 10 people and 10% of let's just make a random number, 10% of people become competitors. If you start with 10 people, you get one competitor. If you start with a base of 100 people, you have 10 competitors, right? So people say, oh, you have 10 competitors. Well, I have 10 competitors because I have 100 people in my foundation. So where do you focus? Do you focus on that 1% or do you focus on the 100 people? And our philosophy was you focus on the 100. That's my train again. It's like, build the foundation.
Yep.
The people will choose whether they stay at that level or they move to the next level or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to take the comment about the longevity concern and what we are teaching predominantly young youth dancers, but also attempting to teach older individuals, which always makes my toes curl and my teeth go on edge. Very extreme athletic pursuits of the dance world. So a project that you guys have recently launched is Yoga for Long Life. My understanding is that it incorporates your Pilates and yoga background in a way that allows dancers to really heal and train their bodies in a more sustainable way. Is that correct?
Yes. But once again, based on what I just said about the big pyramid, I am not going for elite yogis. I am what I found on my yoga journey was I would go into a class, and I mean, because there's a whole bunch of different styles of yoga, so I'm not going to do, but you would go into a class and they would start you with very basic stuff. And then when you get to level 2, they're doing handstands. And the jump between level 1 and level 2 was to the point where many of those people would never do it. They would get injured trying to do it. And so I look at it this way: competitive athletes, high level athletes who have been doing care for their bodies for years, they're kind of a different category. They know what they need. But the majority of people, my student base, the people that are playing around with stuff, again, they're the bottom of that pyramid. And about 300,000 people a year fall. The majority of those falls are sideways. They're not necessarily forward or back. 30,000 of those people never leave the hospital. So
They'll throw an embolism and basically,
yeah, I mean, my grandfather died that way. He broke a hip. People don't die from broken hips. He died, broken hip.
Right.
So it's a very real issue. And what happens is, I'll just say, more of the weekend warrior, not the super champions, because they will seek out the high level and training that they need. But the regular person, that base of the pyramid, they may have gone through their whole life and their level of fitness, because they were relatively active, was good enough. And they're crossing a threshold. They're not, as I always, my verbiage is a day or two past 20, right? Because one of the things I observed is you can look at 5-year-olds, they can do things with their body, they can still whatever. By 10, I'm already seeing the restrictions in the body, and I'm seeing that lack of flexibility and the habits of motion that are ingrained. By 20, those habits of motion are calcified, solidified into the body, and will remain that way for the rest of their lives, for good and for bad. And this is why I tell people, you know your mom's walk, your sister's walk, your dad's walk. You can spot them in a crowd because you recognize the way they move. We have a recognizable habits of motion that carry over into everything we do. So by the time we've hit 20, those habits of motion have crystallized in our body and have set up deficiencies and problems. And so taking that concept of not trying to do headstands, not trying to do anything super fancy, but to expand those habits of motion, take you into movements that you hadn't necessarily done, start focus on bringing balance between the left and right side of the body, strengthening the things that weren't necessarily strengthened. And if you always move the same way, you don't know, it goes back to, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that this side is tighter than that side. You don't know that this is weak and that is strong. I mean, before I started yoga, I had a year-round six-pack. I thought I had great abs. I walked around with a year-round six-pack. I thought it was all that until I walked into my first yoga class and I didn't have the correct ab strength to do what was being taught in that class. Totally changed my view of what strong abs were. So, and there's a lot of people that are like me that have a preconceived idea of what is strong, and they think they have that strength, and it's not until it's challenged. So I have focused on building a yoga program that the intermediate classes, which I really have only planned on teaching a few, not a whole lot, because that's not my big priority, are the same as what you would find in any intermediate yoga class in any school. What I've now taken is what's below intermediate and broken into 9 levels. So it's not just like beginner, intermediate. It's like, okay, these are the skills that people need to walk into any studio and take an intermediate class. And while I'm still teaching intermediate classes, my focus, my energy that I've gone into is that concept of a teacher, is how can I break down these skills and explain them to people and get bodies that haven't had those balance, that have got these crystallizations, that have these habits of motions, and gently bring them through, and not be geriatric chair yoga. That there's something in between, because there's a lot of people that have done the geriatric chair yoga, and I've done a few of those. But really, my niche is for those people in between, helping them develop the skills so that they can carry the grandkids and they can do the groceries and they don't fall down. And what?
Slow down.
I'm excited.
I didn't have coffee. She must have.
I had tea.
Okay. Yes.
But that's really the goal as I'm focusing on there. And because I was trained in Pilates, the Pilates that I'm bringing in is along those same lines. A little bit trickier for Pilates to be structured in pre-recorded classes, but basically it's the same concept that I'm working to build through there.
That's awesome.
So.
Well, and I feel like that mirrors so much of what you've already discussed about your dance teaching philosophy, which is we have this pre-described leveling system and we have established information, and we don't necessarily want to change the information, but we want to change how we're getting to the information and the process and the path and the process that we're taking to reach those checkpoints of our information that we're disseminating to our students.
You've heard her say many times, and I've said it several times, we're skill-based teachers. Mm-hmm. We're not pattern-based teachers. And so every skill that you can basically take in dancing is something we do in life, because otherwise dancing is not created in a dance studio. Nobody said, I'm going to start with a quick step. People were doing it, and dance teachers codify it and calcify it. Mm-hmm. And they make it, I hate to say the word, so that the McDonald's teachers can replicate the same teaching. Unfortunately, the words are memorized. You know, I remember back when I worked for schools, they would require you to pass the wordage, you know, and even getting taking your tests to be a judge. A quarter of a turn, you know, an eighth of a turn between 1 and 2, continue to run, you know, and oh my God. But I understand the need for the understanding of it, but you don't want to regurgitate that to the student. And so if you start by giving them very simple skills that are replicatable without frustration, you are going to turn out hundreds of students. Once you've turned out those students, if they enjoy it enough that they want to compete at it, great. But it's like, it's so far down the road. Like I said, you teach a group class with 100 people in it, you're going to make more money. But the teachers try a group class without the skills of teaching that many people, and without the skills to teach even group skills. And they fail, and so they carry a class for months and months and months, don't make any money. They fall back to one student, one teacher, and what can they do with them? Pro-am. Because you take them to gold, and they go out dancing, nobody can dance gold, therefore they can only dance with a teacher, which adds to a lot of frustration and people giving up. So if it's taught dancing the same way, in yoga, we're teaching, or Terryl's teaching, skills.
So basically, the way I've structured my syllabus is the same. Like when we did our syllabus, which I'll come back to the dancing, but I've structured my syllabus not on what people normally think of a level is like, okay, what skill is needed here? What skill? Well, I'm going to start teaching them this skill at this level. So these are the things that I can use to teach the skill, and these are the things I can use to teach the skill, which is the same way we would take our ballroom classes and our Latin classes, salsa, whatever. Is we would say, okay, our students would say in week 1 salsa, they're teaching pattern A and pattern B. That's what the students would say. We were teaching, this is how we described what we were teaching week 1. In week 1, we're teaching separation and connection and changing hands, the ability to change hands. Now, notice that doesn't include a step. So if I felt like I could pull this step out and put another step that did equal skill. Yep. So every class was focused on the skills. So that was week 1 was this skill, and week 3 was combining skills from week 1 and week 2 and adding in a third skill. And week 4, and this is how we screwed everybody up, because everybody, like for example, they would take a test and we'd say, you're being tested on what you learned this month. We would take the skills that we did in week 1, 2, and 3, use new patterns, and that was their test to get to the next level, which they would go, but we didn't learn those steps in weeks 1 through 3. It's like, no, you didn't learn those steps, but you learned those skills.
So we say, is this from week 1?
So I'd say, is this new? Is this new? Is this new? Is this new? And they're like, no. It's like, what's new? It's a new combination of these skills. And part of the reason why I do that, secret, is we wanted them to fail, because I wanted to keep them in level 1 longer until they actually were good enough or they actually handled those skills and they recognize it. Right. And the average person stayed in my level 1 for 3 cycles. But side note is it was all based on skills. And that's exactly the same thing I've done in the yoga. Rather than doing typical yoga classes, I've broken down what the skill is that at this level they should be able, a novice. Okay, so basically I've got nurturing, novice, beginner, improver, and at each one of those I've got them subdivided. I've got, there's
intensity levels,
right? So there's people that are just coming out of beginner. Okay, now they're wanting to work toward being an intermediate. They have new skills. Well, there's the people that are just going from beginner to introduction to those new skills, and then there's people that have kind of got the skills and are ready to start going into intermediate. Those two people have got different needs. Mm-hmm. So all those transitions, I fought through what these transitions are to get people up through the different levels and focused on that level to make it more accessible, and bringing into the people feeling uncomfortable. It's the one thing that is a little bit different. It is an online yoga program. There's lots of online programs. But what is different is, in addition to my online program, I do a weekly Zoom class. And what is different about my Zoom class is when I first did it, I did like everybody else, I did the class live. But then I found I couldn't watch the students. So as a teacher, that was driving me bazooka. So what I do is I pre-record the class, I play the class to the students, and I watch them through my teacher's eyes. And then I can give them feedback. I can either give them feedback at the Q&A after the class, which there's always a Q&A after the class. So I am available personally. And if they're uncomfortable with doing it in front of everybody else in the Zoom, they know that they can text me or email me or whatever. They can contact me privately and get some feedback. So they have the access to a real life teacher who is watching their practice and is available for Q&A, but they also have the anonymity and the convenience of being able to do a class whenever they want, because it's online. They can do it in the middle of the night on Sunday night if they want.
Our Netflix style library is up to 280 videos. So I've been basically, because of the pandemic, I didn't have anything to do. So I got to play with all my toys. I got to edit, which I hadn't done in many years. And so we cranked out 280 videos. We were shooting about one every other day. And now, not only those, but we're also doing the same thing with combining the
Well, we've had
dance-
requests for dance
Right.
lessons on that
So
too.
we're starting to put together the other half of the program, which will be a separate site, but it's going to be the ballroom part of
Well, it's dance part, just the
Dance
dance
part,
part,
yeah,
not
the
ballroom,
dance part.
dance part.
yes.
Because some of our former students just like, we miss having lessons with you.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to figure out how we can take the same format because, you know, this is partner dancing. It's got different limitations than yoga, but to create along the same line of.
I want to jump back to when Terryl started when she was talking about this. She talked about the number of people that fall. And one of the things that dancing and yoga both do is they work on balance and core strength. But
They're both anti-aging.
right, yes, and for Alzheimer's, it's a very useful thing. They've come up with studies, conclusive in one respect, but all of those things will help you.
Yep.
And so we're looking at the aging population and saying, look, we're still able to teach the young ones and whatever. Okay, you go take that kid and you bounce them around and whatever, no problem. But we're going to focus on where there's massive amounts of growth of, the senior population is one aspect. But for a lot of people, don't wait until you're seniors. Start this now.
It's preventative.
Right.
And because, I mean, just 12 minutes a day of weight bearing is enough to prevent bone loss. So that can be dancing, that can be yoga. So, I mean, 12 minutes a day is really all it takes to prevent bone loss, to prevent falls, to prevent Alzheimer's. And you don't want to wait till you
Don't
already.
look at me when you say that.
Well, yeah. You don't want to wait till you're already experiencing bone loss. You don't want to wait till you've already fallen. You don't want to wait till you're already losing your memory. You want to start doing those things beforehand.
Right.
So we're trying to, tie it in. And so all of that comes back to now the schools that are, pandemic was a reality check for a lot of people. A lot of studios went under and some never closed. They kept the doors open, people in the back door and stuff. And that was not a good thing, to me. It showed that a lot of people didn't care about other people. And it was only me, and I understand your business has to survive. But for me, the studios, if the studios go under, I'm talking about the ballrooms now, not studios. If the ballrooms go under, there's no place to do
To use what you're learning.
what they're other than competition. Think about this. If the only place you have to do, ballroom dancing is at a competition, and they've eliminated all social dancing, where would you be able to do it?
Yeah.
You can't.
So the club experience or the places where that host the social dancing, to me, are more important than the studios.
Absolutely.
Because there's always going to be another studio.
Yep.
But the places that host social dancing, I think
That's where I talk about the usability. If dance teachers understood that lose the strict tempo music, use real music, now people will come in and you can have a session like skating has a public session and they have a patch session and they have hockey and they have all these different things and they rotate through. And so you could have the mob session where people are just standing there and bopping around to the same music. And then they see, oh my God, look at the good ones. Now they're in a session that's advanced. And that advanced session, people are doing quick step and whatever. And you would have people gravitate into that, but you would be growing the base where, to be honest, that's where the money is. We taught at a salsa congress, the first LA Salsa Congress, and the editor of the biggest salsa magazine online worldwide said, I can't believe they have you teaching beginners. I said, that's who I'd rather teach.
Yeah.
I could go out and teach an advanced grouping, great, but I made the most impact teaching our method.
our
And
foundation.
she ended up writing this whole article about how we were talking about the physics of movement to beginners, and they were just soaking it up. And she goes, I had never heard anybody. She goes, I'm so used to take your foot and put it here, take your foot and put it there. And we were coming in and talking about the physics of the rotation and things like that. So it was, that was kind of a life-changing thing for us. We always took something and said, there's a need for this. And her yoga, now our fitness overall thing, we're still looking at the same thing. It's bringing it to more people. And, we're not reinventing the wheel, just the opposite. We're seeing, think about it this way. Yes, there are 1,000 entries, 10,000 entries at Ohio Star Mall, except for one thing. You have people going out there doing 500 and 600 entries.
Yep.
So don't brag to me about how many entries you have. How many people? You're still, other than Ohio and maybe Emerald, a couple of others, you're still talking about 2,000 people.
Yeah.
2,000 out of 320 million.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you go to, for example, we are kind of getting into the Shag World now. In the Shag World, they have week-long convention, not week-long, 10-day-long conventions where people just go and the entire street is covered with clubs that are,
And people just go from
they
building to
bought
building,
from club to club following the DJs and dancing. You go to a swing or a salsa event after the competition, they go and eat, and then they come back and social dance from midnight or 1 o'clock until 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Now, those people are practicing more than the person that goes into the studio and has her weekly.
and is
or
getting up
bi-weekly
at 5
meetings.
o'clock to get their hair done
Mm-hmm.
for the
Right.
competition. Which I do want to do one little PSA though here about having places to dance. And this is something that you hear over and over, and people will complain about the places to dance disappearing. And for us, the places to dance is so critical for us dancing. And yet they won't spend money there. And the places, because dancers have the reputation of costing the clubs money. They scare people off and they don't spend money. And that's why clubs quit having the dances. Dancers don't realize they're cutting off their own nose. And granted, we don't want to drink alcohol and try to dance, but spend money, right? I mean, you don't have to spend a lot, but in order to keep the places open for us to have places to go dance, and that's in ballroom, that's in swing, that's in salsa, that's in tango, I don't care what kind, the house, not the studio, but the places that are providing us the opportunities to dance, they need
To survive.
They need to survive.
Survive and thrive.
Because if they survive, then there will be need for studios, and there will be need for teachers.
Yep.
But not necessarily the other way around. If it's only teachers and studios and they haven't supported those other places, and the only places to compete is, the only way to do this is at competitions.
In costumes with a fake tan.
And that goes
and
back
big
to your,
hair.
and to me, that goes back to your gatekeeping question. We need to support the non-strict tempo, the clubs, the people because as long as those exist, our industry will always have entry-level people.
Yep.
Without those, we will lose our entry-level people. And I think that's our focus in everything we do is our entry-level people.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what
getting
sums us up.
getting back to the entries. We're getting, each promoter is more and more. Hey, we're up to this many entries. This many entries. The world's not growing now. You're seeing a lot of the kids, and yet, who are the kids that you're seeing? A lot of the Russian kids whose parents come here and realize for their kids that's as valuable as being a piano virtuoso or a violin virtuoso, and they get their kids into it. And I don't see a whole lot of what I call the white bread Americans getting their kids into that. They're getting them into soccer and football and whatever, but we've lost our way.
Yeah.
And we've lost our way because we got we forgot that social is more important.
And they didn't have the social. So I don't think
they
It's not the
preach that
expectation.
social is a waste of time.
Yeah.
and since they're the predominant at this point, the majority in our community, and they don't appreciate, not not all of them. I mean, there's definitely do, but as a whole, the competitive mindset doesn't necessarily appreciate the social because they look at it and see it's a lower dance form, forgetting the fact that that's what they're in essence feeding off of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's dance, sport, and ballet are thought of in the same category. When I speak to Eastern European competitors, it's said in the same sentence, ballet and ballroom. So the expectation is, well, there's not social ballet, so why would there be social ballroom? And to your point, if you have kids that are growing up in the US and you're white and you're middle class, you're probably putting them in sports because athletics are going to get you a scholarship. And if you are a minority, Latino or African American, quite honestly, you probably can't afford the cost of ballroom dance lessons at studios for very long. And there aren't programs to help subsidize that in a lot of cities, or you don't have it as part of the school system, which makes it inaccessible. So I think to your point, finding the root of if this is a social experience, if the goal of dance is language and community and partnership and creating a social environment for us to do that, then the best thing that we can do as studio owners and instructors is support the local businesses and the local community organizations that can create the opportunity for dance to exist in our community, whether that's working with bars and restaurants, whether that's working with, if you have like creative arts organizations. I know in Salt Lake, they have Excellence in the Community, which partners their jazz bands, performers with dance opportunities. So finding that and supporting that and breeding a positive environment in those areas so that you do have people that go, oh, that looks really fun. How can I learn to do that?
Right. Exactly.
There's, the fallacy that that kids are going to get a scholarship. It's a joke. That I saw the numbers, the percentage of kids that go from anything, even to the scholarship level, is minute. Out of a school of 5,000 kids, 5 might get a scholarship, but you get 70 kids playing football, 11 are playing at any given moment. And the majority
of
them
dancing, all 70 would be dancing.
Right.
That's the difference. And in terms of I'll take California, they're not going to be able to afford grass pretty soon, okay, because of the water. So you're going to see those spaces, a big basketball court for 10 kids, 5 from another school, 5 kids using a basketball court, volleyball, 11 or whatever, 7, whatever the numbers are. Football, the cost to do these sports compared to dancing. But the only problem is the perception of what we give when we introduce kids to dancing. It's either ballet. Mm-hmm. I don't want my boy to be a ballet dancer, right? Mm-hmm. Or the competitive aspect of it, which requires a long time. Why not
money?
Why not teach kids just to dance to their music?
Whatever their music is.
Let's put it this way. Twerking and all that stuff that's kind of the parents got to hide their faces. In showing kids how they could touch, the human need for touch in a safe way when left to their own devices.
In a way that the parents can be more comfortable with.
Think about it this way. The parents could be out there next to the kids, dancing to the kids' music. That's been the big resurgence of West Coast swing.
And Shag and Salsa,
yes.
Is you've got the parents and the grandparents out there dancing the same dances as the kids.
Yep.
To their music, to the kids' music.
To the current evolution of what the music is.
And then eventually you say, yes, I know you like McDonald's, but someday you'll enjoy shrimp and lobster. And the kids are like, nah, I don't want that. It's something that they grow into. The Frank Sinatras and the Linda Ronstadt. You'll grow into that. It's not like we want to kill the old stuff, but trust me, I have a personal thing against this strict tempo ballroom stuff because it's
unrelatable to the non-dancers.
It's diabolically bad.
Yep.
I mean, singers are bad, but you know, and see, nobody wants that when you come in. Why do we have to make it so structured that they can only dance it at one tempo?
Yep.
That's where we fail.
No,
it's
absolutely.
our inability to adapt to real music. So it shows how little we know. And I'm going to give you a quick little story. I was the U.S. amateur champion. I thought I was hot stuff. I could jive. My jive was probably my best dance. I go to Disneyland, where they used to have, they probably still do have it, a Sunday dance that would bring in big bands, and there'd be dancing. And we would go, and at one time they had disco, but they always had an area for big bands. And I thought, I'm going to go in there and do my thing. I took a friend, and it was Lionel Hampton's big band. And the curtain opens to Hamp's Boogie Woogie. And my first thought is, ooh, this is a little fast. But I'm the US champion. I can handle this. And all these old timers that in that day, 1979, were probably in their mid 50s. To me, they were dinosaurs. And I was going to show them what a dancer could do. You know, ego. And I go out there and I start jiving. And my partner is staying with me and we're jiving. And I look over, they're not doing jive. They're doing something else. And in about 3 minutes, I'm like, I'm heaving. I mean, and at 4 minutes, I'm coughing up a lung. I have to sit down. The band went 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes. And I have to sit down. I'm dripping wet from one song. And these old timers are just doing Balboa.
Yeah.
And most pros would have, turned tail and run, just left. Me? Because I'm competitive. Okay. All right. What are you guys doing? Because they looked at me like, what's the matter, kid? You can't cut it. And they taught me something that I didn't know. What I didn't know was I was trying to fit music into what I had been taught as opposed to dancing to what was playing. Mm-hmm. And so one of them said to me, kid, you were in the wrong gear. I was doing jive and the music was probably playing at 180, 190 beats a minute. And they were doing Balboa. They weren't breaking a sweat. And because they were efficient and doing the dance that fit that speed of music, they could go all night long. I burned out after one song. I was like, okay. And that's when I signed up for real swing lessons. Yeah. So that's the thing that we don't understand. We're trying to make we're selling people dancing to straight tempo. Nobody wants that garbage. Teach how to dance to whatever's playing. So an interesting thing, I go in and I do seminars at some schools and I say, how many of you think it's easier to teach East Coast swing? And 99% will shoot their hands up. And I go, do you realize that West Coast swing not only is more usable because of its variety of tempo, it is not the slow swing. We danced the US Open and we opened at 168 beats a minute and finished at 192 West Coast swing. And so if it's taught correctly, you can do it at any tempo. Mm-hmm. But what they don't realize is who learns faster, the man or the woman? The guy's busy, right? The guy's, first of all, he doesn't have the background of ballet and cheer and all that. So he's going to find it a little more difficult. West Coast swing, he's pretty much standing there guiding. He's learning to lead. And all he has to do is keep time with his feet. He only has to turn left or turn right. Mm-hmm. Or blocker, right? So the first 6 steps of West Coast swing, the guy never needs to go beyond those, really beyond 4. And the woman can also learn variations, syncopations, so she can progress at her level and he's happy. And I like to demonstrate that if the guy does it right, he can take her to a bar where they have a big screen TV and they've got football playing on the screen, and he can keep his eyes on the screen as he passes her from one side to the other. And now he focuses on her during the commercials. All right, time back in. All right, he just goes back to letting her pass. So, but in reality, West Coast swing you can use for jazz, blues, R&B, rock and roll, hip hop,
Yep.
Ballroom. You can use it for foxtrot. You can use it for country. What can you not use it for? Waltz.
Right.
So you teach, I call it the Swiss Army knife of dancing. You teach something that's usable. Now say to them, yeah, but what are you going to do when they play cha-cha? You can swing, but it isn't the same thing. Now you cross them into, in the swing world, they cross paths with nightclub two-step, hustle, a little cha-cha, and occasional. They call it the California mix now.
In some countries.
In some countries.
No, and some countries.
And some countries, excuse me.
Some two-step.
Yeah, but that's why. You start them with getting good at something, and once they learn that, learning anything else is like a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to take them into syllabus, and you don't have to take them into patterns. You take them into lead and follow. And then when they see a Jack and Jill, they go, well, how do you judge them? Well, you see who's more musical. And the audience can pick the winners.
Right.
Because it's not about who pointed their toe best. It's who connected with their partner and the music. And then you give extra credit for improvisation and, creativity. Yeah. So
absolutely.
It's funny. That's why I start everybody with West Coast swing if they don't want salsa. They come in and they want to, I say, what kind of music do you like? Mm-hmm. Well, what would fit that kind of music? Instead of saying, well, okay, you're going to come in, I'm going to teach you the waltz. Do we see a disconnect there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love this. I feel like I could talk to you guys for like 4 more hours, but I know that you probably have very busy days to get to. So I will leave this podcast episode, which turned into 2 rather quickly. I will leave this conversation here for the moment, and hopefully I can have you both on a future episode to continue this dialogue, because I love your perspective about skills-based instruction and building your foundation and letting that grow into a more positive dance community and a positive teaching opportunity. So thank you both so much for being on Ballroom Chat. Where can people find you after this episode when they're listening to it?
I'll give you 4 websites. How's that?
Perfect.
Terryl's is yoga, the number 4 for long life. Yoga for long life. We have our own, which is kind of we use it for movie auditions and stuff like that, Enio and Terryl.com. The one that I think will help studios, teachers, or whatever is EXT, danceconsulting.com. And that one, I have a little quiz on there for teachers to see if they know, what they don't know. But it's for fun. And then our old studio, which we kept as a yearbook, letsdancela.com. And that one was when people say, we want to see, do you really walk the walk? Yeah, we did it for, 25 years. Yes, and we documented it. In fact, it's still growing.
And then basically, it was transformed into, that's why he said, a yearbook. So it's an online yearbook for the students.
We just keep adding stuff.
To keep adding, and for them to share pictures and whatever. So
awesome.
That is.
And those links, if you are listening or if you are watching this episode right now, those links will be in the description box below. So click on those and check them out. Thank you, Enio and Terryl, so much for being guests today again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you once again to Enio and Terryl for being such wonderful guests for the podcast. If you have any follow-up questions, if you want to reach out and find out more information about either their consulting or their yoga platform, you can do so in the links, using the links in the description box below. As always, I'm Samantha. I'm your host with Ballroom Chat. You can follow the Ballroom Chat podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Ballroom Chat, or you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/ballroomchat. We occasionally post patron-only content over there, so thank you so much for the support. It really does help the podcast grow. If you have not already done so, please do make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe button, follow button. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast if that is where you are listening to this. We really do appreciate both your feedback, your likes, your follows. Again, it kind of helps us reach a bigger audience. And that's really the goal, is to make sure that we are sharing our stories and our learning experiences with the most people in our community possible and beyond our community, so it can grow. So once again, thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Next episode, I have another dynamic duo, a little bit of a lighter episode, but we get into some useful learning information and tools and tips that they are sharing. So be sure to tune in for our next episode when it drops. And as always, stay safe, stay positive, and I hope to see you dancing very soon.